Welcome back to another episode of the Media Pass. I am your host, Alex, with my other host, Matt. Matt, how the heck are you?
Got 2 words for you, Alex. Do you have any idea what those 2 words might be?
I think I have a hunch.
We were talking pre-show about this, folks, but Deni Avdija. Deni freaking Avdija, man. You been watching him lately?
I admittedly have not. I was actually looking when we were talking pre-show at how many Wizards games I've watched this year, and I don't think I watched a single Wizards game in the month of February or January.
As you should not do. We've talked about this before. I have a problem where I really like to watch bad teams. I can't help myself with that, but I've watched a good bit of Wizards games. I think I've got 9 full games on the season, 9 or 8, something like that. And I was watching him play the Pelicans, man, and it was just like the culmination of a lot of the growth I'm starting to see from him this year. Just a lot more aggression on his drives. The jump shot's getting better. I don't know if it's as good as the 41% indicates. He's always been a really good defender. It's just really cool because, I feel like especially, the people in our niche, right, they love these, tantalizing, non-shooting wings and forwards and, think that, if they could just get a jump shot, they could do this, this, and that. And, it's they always don't get the jump shot, It's, because it's really actually hard to have the jump shot. If you don't have it, it's really hard to develop one. But it's cool to see Deni's, actually, in year 4, really starting to live up to a lot of that promise people had for him. But that has nothing to do with the premise of this episode, it does have a lot to do with how I'm feeling, because a lot of my mood derives on how well these NBA players are playing. But yeah, man, great. Let's talk about basketball.
I will say one thing I've noticed that people do with young players, and it's weird to me that this still even happens, but I've noticed it with Deni. I've noticed it with Brandon Miller. And several other young players that are on bad teams. Someone will point out, this young player is averaging blah, blah, blah over the last 15, 20 games, whatever, or in the month of blank. And someone will reply to it or leave a comment, and they'll be like, what's their record? Say their record. And it's we're not saying that. We're not saying that their team's good. We're not saying that they're supposed to be elevating their team to some magically incredible record. It's no, they're on a bad team. Chances are the reason they're that good and on a bad team is because they were good enough to be picked that high. You don't have those expectations placed on you unless you're picked high, which chances are if you're picked high, it's because the team that drafted you is terrible. Mm-hmm. Just the cognitive dissonance that some people have when, you point out, I noticed it a lot with the Brandon Miller video I did. People were like, the Hornets suck though. They're 11 and blah, blah, blah. And it's bro, it's the Hornets. They're not supposed to be. LaMelo's played 22 games. What are we doing here?
There's there's maybe even Victor Wembanyama, Yama. You know what I mean. You know his name.
Yeah.
You know his name. Even with how incredible he is, he's playing a top 40, 50 player in the world right now, whatever you want to put him at. He still can't get the Spurs out of their rut. So it's very atypical for a rookie to really it's actually almost never happens where a rookie takes a bad team and makes them good. It's honestly really hard for any player in NBA history to do that kind of floor raising. That's why, Russell Westbrook's 2016 season or whenever he did it is still so impressive because of how he was just the sheer amount of floor raising he was able to do for that Thunder team.
It's crazy that, basketball is a team sport.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who would have thought?
That you want to talk about cognitive dissonance? I talk to a lot of people about, football and, people street football. It's such more, it requires so much more thought than basketball. And they're that's a team sport. You can't carry a player. I'm just because there's less guys on the basketball court does not remove the fact that it is still a team sport. That one guy can't just get you a bucket for an entire season and win you an NBA title. I don't know. I would love to just sit down with some fans and like explain to them like how Michael Jordan's teams played, all the sophisticated X's and O's, why every piece kind of fit together perfectly. Long rant. Speaking of Russell Westbrook, though, he's a point guard. And Alex, what are we going to do today?
That was a really good segue.
Thanks, man.
So we're stooping to the bottom of the barrel and really just trying to juice some views. So we decided that it would be fun to do a top 10 point guard list. But, you know, we're going to have our usual media pass spin to it where we get really like hair splitty and like super way too deep into the analytics. And a lot of you listeners are probably like all like 300 of you or whatever our average like viewership is. A lot of you are probably going to come away from this episode angry. And you may not want to listen to us anymore. And all I'll say to that is give us a shot. Just hear us out. Let us plead our cases. And at the end of the day, it's all opinions. But, Matt, I'm terrified to give this list because I think the landscape of the point guard position has changed drastically, not just in like the past like decade, but in the past, like 2 years, it's so much different now. Like if you go back and I was looking at 2021, 22 and like, who were the top 10 point guards from back then? And now I'm looking at the top 10 point guards now. I'm like, this is so different than what it was. And for that reason, I'm kind of scared about giving this list because I looked at it through a very like now perspective and like kind of ignored what the point guard position has traditionally been viewed as. And I don't know if you did the same. But yeah, that's my preamble.
Couple things. I want to set the stage as I tend to normally do for these kind of things.
Right.
The first thing is, so how did we create our list? We just went on basketball. We didn't do like the whole arbitrary, like confusing kind of narrowly tailored combo guard list we did last time. We just went on Basketball Reference, looked at all the point guards. The only point guard that we didn't consider is Devin Booker, because if you look at like Cleaning the Glass, he's like traditionally listed as a combo guard or wing every other season of his career. And he's actually listed as a combo guard this year. But and then it got into like a slippery slope where if we include Devin Booker, we've got to include Donovan Mitchell. And then it's like, there's guys getting left off this top 10 that it's just like ridiculous to leave them off this top 10. So, I mean, if we want at the end, maybe we could talk about where Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell sort into all of this, although I'm kind of agonizing over that. Another thing I want to talk about here with these point guards. I'll mention the one player I just didn't know what to do with, left him off this list, left a question mark next to him. We'll talk about him first, but hopefully he's not in your top 10. But so point guards, why does this matter? A lot of like, because me and you, we pride ourselves on, like, even though we're doing, you know, this engagement bait right now, right? Even though we're doing it, there is reason for doing it. You know, we're not talking about the 10 guys who Michael Jordan stopped from winning an NBA championship. Like, there is a reason to talk about this, right? Now, you mentioned traditionally how the point guard position has been viewed. For a long time in basketball, the point guard was just like, he was considered, you know, the second coach, right? He was like the guy who made sure everyone was kind of in order where they needed to be on offense. They dribble the ball up the court. They would wait for the floppy action to play out. They would pass the ball to the guy coming off the screen, and they would kind of move over and just stand there and watch like the jump shot take place or the isolation possession or the post up. They just kind of be there. But they were like, you know, just that steadying force, whatever, or captaining the ship. Nowadays, like, we're going to talk about like guys who like size-wise might be like a small forward in Luka Doncic, but like they're the point guard because they initiate all the offense. Like, they're the ones who kind of stir the drink. They're like, we're going to be the one to pierce this fortress, and then the rest of the offense kind of ensues from that. They have a much more attacking role nowadays as opposed to like this, you know, organizational role. And so basically, like, when we're talking about point guards, we're talking about teams' primary creators, basically. And like, a primary creator is, if not the most important part of a championship offense, the second most important part of a championship offense, right? So we're talking right now about the best primary creators in basketball, with the exception of, obviously, we're leaving Mitchell and Booker out for the reasons I kind of outlined before. So this has big time implications when you're talking about the playoffs and building championship teams. So it's definitely important. With that established, one guy who I just didn't know what to do with, kind of threw him to the side. Not going to put him in my top 10 right now. He probably would be in my top 10 in a different year. But what did you do with Ja Morant?
So I didn't include him. Like, I didn't even factor him in at all because, like you said, this has big implications for like the postseason. And the Grizzlies are like, they weren't in that picture to where it was like, oh, he might come back, so like we should factor him in. It's like, no, he's done for the season. They're not going to make the playoffs. Like there's no chance he's coming back. So it was like, I'm just not going to include him. Granted, if he was healthy, I will say this: if he was healthy and he was playing relative to like at a standard level of what we're used to him playing, he would absolutely be on this list. But considering what happened, he's not on here. So if you were listening to this or watching this just for Ja Morant, I'm sorry.
Please keep listening.
Yes.
Another thing we should probably know is this is like intended to be semi-forward facing, where it's like we're not talking about the 10 best point guards of this season. We're talking about like when we go into this playoffs, because there's times where like, we've seen it historically a bunch where a guy is just kind of like, whatever. You see him like half-ass the regular season in the playoffs, like, oh, okay, he's still that dude, and we're kind of trying to make that calculation in our head. So even if like X player is putting up better regular season points than Y player, doesn't necessarily mean that they're the better point guard hierarchically. Right. Yeah. We'll do honorable mentions at the end, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to let you go first. Who do you have at number 10?
Man. So this was like a last minute change. By the way, you know what's crazy is all 10 of my point guards, when we do our top 25 episode, will probably be in the top 25. That's like how crazy stacked this position is. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think
maybe
so.
The top 27, 28, but
top 30 for sure, without question.
Yeah. It's crazy for one position to make up whatever it is, a third of the top 27, top 30. But I'm stalling because like I might switch it afterwards. But I mean, I'm a big fan of this guy. I love his game. I got De'Aaron Fox at 10.
Ooh.
Yeah. First of all, I will say, go ahead.
This is going to be interesting because I have De'Aaron Fox on my list, but I don't have him at 10. So I'll be curious who you have over him and why, but that's a discussion for when I get to De'Aaron Fox. Yeah. So continue.
I'll say this. He probably has a case as the best defender in my top 10 point guards. I don't know about you. I think he's very solid on the ball. Just watching that Nuggets game from Wednesday, and that steal he made on the ball to close out that game with the last minute left to put him up by like 5 or 7. I can't remember what it was. But like that's just like he's capable of those big time on ball kind of swiper moments. But I don't know, dude. The thing is, efficiency is really down this year. He's in the 39th percentile, I think, in scoring volume. Efficiency. His rim percentages are down from 74% at the rim to 61%. And I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe just having an off year. But the thing is, like, he's always been a low 60s finisher around the rim. So it's making me think that, last year was kind of more of an aberration. Mid-range numbers are down a little bit. The pull-up shooting that was just like off the charts to start the year is finally kind of stabilized. So it's like, it's weird. And he's also not like a great elite passer. He's like a really good passer, but not an elite one. So it's like he's probably the best defensive guard out of these 10, but also probably the worst offensive player out of the 10 guys we're going to talk about. And for this particular position, I feel like you have to lean towards offense. And so with that, I don't know. I just think the other 9 guys I like more than him.
This one's tough for me just because I agree defensively. I'll say this. I'm stalling a little bit too. Defense, when it comes to point guards, is definitely a needle mover for me. Because I think way too often now we're just like, accepting bad defense from point guards. And like, I'm not trying to be like an old head and like, oh, kids don't play defense these days. It's like, no, defense is like, teams are playing the best defense we've seen. They're just only allowed to play so much defense, which is, again, is a different discussion for another day, blah, blah, blah. I'm stalling. De'Aaron Fox, for me, his defense definitely moved the needle enough for me to put him a little bit higher. And I also think his improvement as a three-point shooter, not just in efficiency, but in volume, is something that I definitely wasn't expecting. And I think it makes them, assuming it carries over to the postseason, which isn't necessarily a given, I think that's something that hurt them a little bit in the playoffs last year. Not necessarily just in like raw efficiency, but also in volume, just like actually being able to leverage the threat of De'Aaron Fox as a perimeter scorer was something that I valued a lot, or I value a lot heading into the postseason potentially, assuming that it does hold up and assuming that the volume maintains, which again isn't a given. But all that being said, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and give my number 10.
I will say, so my number 9, if he's your number 10, this was originally my number 10, and I flip-flopped him and Fox the very last second. I do like Fox's physicality and how that portends to a postseason series. So, I mean, if your 10 is who I think it is, you might be able to convince me to switch him.
I'm so scared to say this. My number 10 is Damian Lillard.
You went there?
I did. Jeez, oh my gosh. I'm so scared, dude.
I couldn't go that low. I could not go that low. Can you? I mean, I kind of want to with you because I think it's happening. The decline is happening. But please, go ahead. Speak.
And I say this as someone who I gassed up the Damian Lillard Milwaukee, but like everyone did. Everyone was freaking out about it, understandably, because it was supposed to be good. But what no one was counting on was Damian Lillard having like his most underwhelming season in 5 years. I mean, obviously some of those seasons were riddled with injuries, but like it's hard to overstate how bad he's been as a scorer. Like if you're looking at it by zone, not only is just like his assertiveness as a scorer down, but like these are all numbers per cleaning the glass, which factors out heaves. So bear that in mind. From three as a whole, he's 34% this year. From the mid-range, 40%, and that includes 41% from long mid-range, which is like pull-up mid-range jumpers, and 38% from short mid-range, which is like floaters, and then 61% at the rim, which like, you know, we kind of accept lower finishing numbers from guards a lot of the time, but that's down from last year where he was at 63%. Last year, he shot 47% from floater range, 38% this year. Last year, 51% from long mid-range, 41% this year. And then 3-point percentage-wise, he shot 37% last year and 34% this year. Like, not only, and my bigger issue is that he is not nearly as assertive as a scorer as he needs to be, but it's not like being passive has reaped benefits. Him being a passive scorer has not had a positive impact that I think him being more assertive of a scorer would. And then you factor in the defensive issues. He's just simply like any way you cut it, he's been a terrible defender this year. And him and Giannis have flashes of working really, really well together. And then it just doesn't sustain or it doesn't click. So I don't know. It's just this is one that I might put him at 9 because the guy I have at 9, the more I'm thinking about it, it's hard for me to have this guy over Damian Lillard. So I might swap that. But for me, he's in that like 9 to 10 spot because I tried so hard. Like I did something that you're not supposed to do from like a scientific perspective where like I had a goal that like I wanted to achieve, which was I don't want Damian Lillard to be 9 or 10. So I'm going to look for every bit of evidence that I can to argue that he should be higher. And as I did that exercise, I just couldn't do it. Like I can't justify it. So yeah, I have him at 10.
Interesting.
I did not want to have him at 10.
That's interesting. I mean, I agree with everything you said. Like Dame has had a rough year, and then with his age, and like the thing is, like if last season doesn't happen, he was kind of already on this trend from what was it, 21, 22? Like he was already slowing down. So last season he has that big like blimp where he's just insane offensively, maybe like one of the top 7, top 8 best offensive players in the world. And now maybe he's coming back down to earth from that. It's like, and the defense is bad. It's him. He's probably the second or third worst defender in this top 10. There's probably one pretty obvious one we'll talk about in a second. But and then offensively, yeah, it's like numbers. I think he's 56th percentile in efficiency, which is just not where you want it to be for a guy who's like really leaning on his offense for value. 89th percentile volume. I'll say this though. So him and Giannis in 1,300 minutes, 9.42 net rating. Okay. Also, when that starting five is on the court together in 1,137 possessions, 16 plus 16 per 100 possessions. Pretty good. Pretty good, man. Like it feels like defenses still really, really respect the guy. He's still automatic 2 to the ball. And I know he has the postseason. He's also, that's another thing. He has a tendency to dip in the postseason. The game might be a little too physical for him. He might get bothered by the length. But just with his indicators, the fact that he's playing with kind of an imperfect fit in Giannis, it turns out, because of they don't really have good like screen cadence, like pick and roll cadence together. The fact that he's still like putting up these kind of indicators, I had him at 8th. Maybe I was falling for the same trap as you, but I feel like that. I don't know. Would you? Okay, so if you were would the Kings be? If you flip flop Fox and Lillard right now, like where would the Kings be? Where would the Bucks be? You know.
I think the Bucks are a significantly better team if they have
Yes.
Really? Yes.
I don't know. I think I just don't trust the jumper. It's been trending downwards all year after the hot start with Fox.
I can live without the jumper if you're getting the scoring in general, like compared to what you're getting from Damian Lillard this year. Regardless of the jumper, I understand not having the 3-point threat is something that's definitely more schemable, but also it's like just as a whole, I think. And this is, I guess, more removed from coaching because the coaching aspect at play here is something worth factoring in. And in this particular discussion, we have to take that out of the equation. But like in a perfect world, I still think there's definitely a way for De'Aaron Fox and Giannis to function together. And then also like the backcourt defense improvement that you're getting with De'Aaron Fox, I think just makes the Bucks as a whole, as a defensive unit, make a lot more sense just like schematically. Like the reason they were able to get away with drop coverage last year to such a high extent that they was because Jrue Holiday is such an incredible screen navigator, and De'Aaron Fox would be able to kind of scratch that similar itch of like, okay, yeah, we're going to have Lopez sitting back at the nail, and De'Aaron Fox is just going to do the funneling and like his active hands too. I'm thinking of like the Mike Conley and Jaden McDaniel steals that we've talked about before, like the slap from behinds. That works so well when you're defending in drop. And I don't know. I just think Damian Lillard has just, to me, it's just a situation of he has been that underwhelming that I'm willing to say, like, I think De'Aaron Fox in Damian Lillard's place this year makes the Bucks a lot better.
Interesting. I'll say this, okay, just to be that guy, just to give us some perspective, some context. Damian Lillard is in the 89th percentile in scoring volume. Fox is in the 95th, so Fox doesn't beat there. But Damian Lillard's 56th percentile scoring efficiency, Fox 39th percentile. It's also worth mentioning, I would say, Damian Lillard is a better passer than De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
I think it's always awkward with those left-handed guys. I feel like they're a little bit limited passing the ball with their right hand. Maybe that's just me being mean. But Yeah.
Real
okay,
quick,
so
I want to say one. I want to say one more thing about Damian Lillard, and I just
Okay,
found this. It's fair to say that the most important aspect of Damian Lillard on the Bucks is him and Giannis just being unstoppable together, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in 2,852 possessions played together this year, when Damian Lillard is on the floor with Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's averaging 22.4 points per 100 possessions, and he's shooting 34.9% from three. And, like, to me, you need a lot more out of Damian Lillard than 22 points. Like, you need him to be, like, a lot more than that.
Yeah, I get that. My thing is, like, my fear with, like, putting Fox over Lillard. I love Fox. I love the Kings. I've been on the record about enjoying watching the Kings, rooting for them actively. But the thing is, like, Fox historically been a below-average shooter for his position, whereas Lillard's been historically a great shooter. So it's like, what's to say, like, Lillard doesn't just catch fire and Fox just regresses back to the mean? Like, how do we view them after that, you know? Let's move on.
We'd probably have to do a new top 10 point guard list.
So Lillard's 8 for me. He's 10 for you. We don't know where you have Fox. Is Fox, like, really high up where it'd be?
Fox is at 8. Fox
okay,
is
at 8 for you?
Me.
Okay, so we flip-flop them. Okay, so I bet you a good bit of money we have the same number 9.
You say it first.
Trae Young.
Whoa. No, I do not have Trae Young at 9. Holy cow.
You have him higher up?
Oh, yeah. I
forgot. You're a young truther. Yeah, I forgot. Jesus. I mean, what is there to say that hasn't already been said, man? He's a one-man offense in and of himself. I think he's an incredible offensive player. The Hawks this year, despite not really having a coherent team, are where are we here? Where are you, Trae Young? This is great podcasting.
I'm realizing right now our lists are going to be unfathomably different.
71st percentile offense when Trae Young's on the floor, which is not crazy. So defense has improved. I see it a lot on Twitter. I saw was it Paolo Banchero said you can't hunt Trae Young anymore on defense?
I think so, yeah.
I have just a man built like that. You couldn't hunt Trae Young on defense. Like, are you kidding me, Paolo? Like, maybe you can't hunt him because your team has no spacing and the paint is completely clogged. But yeah, you could, if you had like normal spacing, like a regular team spacing, you'd probably be able to hunt him, Trae Young.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, Paolo, you can't hunt anybody because they're helping off the strong side corner every time.
That's why it seems
you have
like
Markelle Fultz as your floor spacer. What?
It's the Trae Young guy, man. Every time I try to drive on him, I can't get anywhere for some reason.
And this is no diss on Paolo. Like, Paolo's fantastic.
Great player. You know the deal with him. Like, great, like, helio ball decision maker. The more time he spends playing a team, the more he figures out their defense. We saw it against the Boston Celtics. He's a mastermind tactician, insane passer. Can contort his body in weird ways to make crazy passes. The defense, though, is still, like, I've been scouting his defense. I kind of wanted to write an article about, like, where he's improved, what still limits him. And I like the effort level. It's still not, he doesn't have a crazy motor. I don't think that's ever going to happen as long as he handles the ball as long as he does. But the thing is, the size is just such a problem, man. Like, no matter how hard you try, it's not even that he's short. He's so frail. He looks smaller than everyone else on the court. Like, anybody, he plays Kyle Lowry, he looks small next to Kyle Lowry. You know what I mean? So that's always going to be a hindrance. He's always going to be like a firm negative on defense, no matter how much effort you get from him. I still question his off-ball juice. I think he's like a good floor spacer. I think teams like face guard him and stuff. But the thing is, he's not like he can't play out of like back cuts and stuff. Because like even if he makes a great cut, he's still so small that like is he really going to explode at the rim and do something crazy? And then, just because he's so frail, physicality, he's not like a physical finisher like Fox. That's kind of why I was debating putting him behind Fox at 10. But yeah, that's why I have him at 9. Understanding that he's in a bad context right now, and I still think he could be like, part of a championship team.
Yeah. I My 9's going to make you mad. I just want you to know that.
I mean, you didn't put Jalen Brunson there, did you?
Oh, no. Jalen Brunson's pretty high for me.
Yeah, he's really high for me.
I won't spoil where I have Jalen Brunson. At number 9. Okay, so I am going to move Dame up to 9. And originally, and this is, I kind of got frantic towards the end here and was not sure where to put him. But we'll say I have Tyrese Maxey at 10. Even though he's not.
Make me too mad.
Tyrese Maxey's weird because, like, treating him as a regular point guard is still an interesting kind of. It's a tougher sell to me because I know we had him on the combo guards list. And then now he's definitely playing, like, way more of a point guard role. But, like, at a certain point, there's only so much value that you can bring to the table. Like, when you're not, like, the focal point of an offense, when you're not, like, the number one guy, like a heliocentric guy, just being a good point guard at the end of the day can get you pretty far. And I feel like Tyrese Maxey's just like, he's good. He's a good point guard. And, like, yes, is he undersized defensively? Absolutely. Is he a bad defender at times? Sure. Is he the worst defender on this list? Far from it, I would say. I think the worst thing you could say about him is he's hideable in a team context. He's been pretty efficient as a scorer, and I think he's a lot more portable than some of these guys. Just like we've seen him do it before, playing off of James Harden and Joel Embiid. It's like Tyrese Maxey can still play off the ball. He does it when Joel Embiid is healthy. And then now we've had to see him take on a more significant offensive burden, and he's not just been fine, he's excelled as he's taken on that increased offensive burden. And really that was kind of like the selling point for me was, okay, Joel Embiid went out. Let's see how Tyrese Maxey's going to do taking the reins. And I think he's done a good job. So it was less of like I'm speaking super, super highly of Maxey and more like, yeah, of guys that I could put here. I'm just like, yeah, but he can go in that 9-10 spot. I'd probably move Damian Lillard up to 9 just because of like kind of the assumption that maybe he will just get back to what we're more used to. But yeah, we'll say Tyrese Maxey at 10, Damian Lillard at 9.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to unhash this again.
Right.
Like there's been,
I think I'm just higher on Maxey than you are.
yeah, I'll say, so he was probably like, he's in my honorable mentions for sure. He's, I'm trying to find what I had some stats. I didn't look too deeply because I knew
this means our list does not have the same people on it.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so that means that somebody in my top 7 is not in your top 10.
I'm so scared.
Where are you, Maxey? I'm trying to find my people. Okay, there he is, yeah. His efficiency just really dips. I mean, you expect that, I guess, when Embiid's off the floor, but it's pretty bad. I was watching him play them. I think it was the Mavericks the other day. And I don't know, it's just different the way he handles double teams and like somebody, like I said, I've already said Jalen Brunson. He's going to be somewhere deep in my top 10, right? Somebody like Jalen Brunson, the way he handles double teams, how he's able to continue his dribble, where Maxey kind of just picks it up and it slows down everything. We've talked about the passing. I think he's an incredible talent. Like, put him in top 50 player in the NBA for me, probably top 40 player in the NBA. If I really had to put a pin on that. But yeah, he was just like 11, 12 for me. So I have at 10 Fox, at 9 Young, at 8 Lillard. You have at 10 Maxey, at 9 Lillard, at 8 Fox. Do you want to do your 7 or should I do my 7?
I'll do my 7, and I'm going to say, oh my gosh, I don't like this. I have Trae Young at 7.
Okay.
And this is really frustrating for me with him specifically because you go back and look at that 2021-22 season from Trae Young. Not only was he clear, obvious top 10 point guard, I'd say he's probably, I was looking at it, he is a top 5 point guard that season. Probably you could make the argument top 3. I'd have to go back and look at it and see the landscape of what everything looked like. But man, it almost looks like an outlier when you look at his 2021-22 season relative to what he's been since then. I really, 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 really wanted to put him higher. I think advantage creation wise, you're going to be hard pressed to find better guys on this list outside of like the top 4. He's just so crafty with the ball. He can carve defenses apart despite, and not saying Trae Young's slow, but like speed wise, when you compare him to a De'Aaron Fox, when you compare him to the explosivity of Shai Gilgeous. I'm going to have to edit that out. When you compare him to the explosivity of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and even the quickness of like Steph Curry, Trae Young isn't necessarily traditionally, just raw speed, but he's fast. And you pair that with his ability to handle the ball so well, like off the dribble, you're gonna have a really hard time finding better ball handlers in this group of guys than him outside of Steph Curry and Luka Doncic. He is so crafty with the ball. The stuff that he does off the dribble and the pick and roll is devastating to defenses. I just want him to get some of that mid-range juice back, because that's really what's hurt him a lot. Is defenses have an easier coverage when they're playing drop against him in the pick and roll, because if that mid-range shot's not going in, they don't second guess that drop coverage as much. And you look at it on the season, I forget what the exact percentages are, but man, his mid-range juice is just so lacking. 2 years ago it was 47%, 52% from long mid-range, 52% from long mid-range. So that's like pull-up mid-range jumpers. This year, 42%, which is like league average. It's fine. And then the floater, the floater's still there. He's still getting to that and knocking it down. But I don't know. It's just the diversity of scoring doesn't feel like what we've seen in the past. It's something I think he can get back to, but I don't know. In the defense, like you said, he's improved as a defender, but is it enough of a needle mover for me? He's still going to be the worst defender on the floor for you, even if he isn't necessarily, as Paolo Banchero said, you can't hunt him. He's still probably your worst defender on the floor at any given time. And then, like, passing wise, I will say this in favor of Trae Young, and this is why I debated having him a lot higher. Outside of Luka, I don't know if there's a better passer on this list. I think him and Luka are the best passers among these top 10 guys. But all that being said, I have him at 7, and I really wanted to have him higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Am I allowed to? This is bad podcasting, but I just had a thing about Maxey I wanted to pull up real quick. Can I say it?
Go for it.
All right. 58% true shooting when Embiid's on the floor with him, so he's below league average with Embiid, which is just a little concerning. The Philadelphia 76ers have the best 5-man lineup in the NBA that's played at least 300 possessions per cleaning the glass. It's Maxey, Melton, Harris, Batum, Embiid. And I feel like what Philly's done there is they've Hakeem Olajuwon Embiid, where they're like, we're going to put you around 4 guys who are like all really, really good, but none of them are stars. None of them are Super Bowl dominant. None of them are these like huge primary creator guys that just fit your skill set really well. And that's how we're going to maximize you. That's how we're going to build a championship team. And because of those parallels, and because of the fact that like that 90s Rockets team never really had a top 25 guy, which are what these top 10 point guards are to me, that's why I don't see Maxey there. I just wanted to put that out there. I just wanted to have a coherent argument. Back to your point about Trae Young. Back to good podcasting. I agree with everything you said. He's such an incredible decision maker, such an incredible helio ball player. I don't think it's that you can't win with Helio ball. Like, there's more nuance to it than that. Helio ball isn't what the people on Twitter who tweet about it think it is. It's just that it's really just the physicality thing for me that bothers me. Like, it would be one thing if he was that height and he was like, more built. But he's just so frail, man, that I have a hard time putting him any higher than 9. Maybe 8. Maybe 8 if I was to kind of be a little bit more liberal about my beliefs on Damian Lillard. So my number 7, I think this is the guy you probably didn't have in your top 10.
Oh boy.
Which kind of worries
I think I know
me.
who it is.
Did you not have James Harden in your top 10?
Oh, I have James Harden.
Oh, really? So who is missing?
Now you're making me nervous that I just forgot somebody. I thought I got everyone.
Yeah, I hope so. We're going to have to hope. Man, I hope. But anyway, so James Harden, my number 7 guy. There's I am the system, his playoff deficiencies, which I think are a little bit overstated. There's all that. But how about I tell you this? When Kawhi Leonard is not on the floor, no Kawhi Leonard, no Kawhi gravity, James Harden, 30 points per 100 on 67% true shooting. Now, when you do that for Paul George, so no Paul George, no, what do they call him? Swaggy P, Spicy P, I don't know. Some sort of playoff P, really good looking guy P. Yeah, right. When no Paul George, it's 31.5 points per 100 on 64% true shooting. His true shooting is still very good when he's on the floor with them. The scoring volume obviously tailors off. So he still has that, like a little bit of that, spread pick and roll, James Harden, I'm going to carry your offense. They
run a ton of it.
Yeah, I'm going to Helio ball you guys. But now he's also showing us that he has like such an intuitive, such a smart player, such a cerebral player that he can like shapeshift his role depending on the team. Like, I remember there was a lot of criticisms that James Harden didn't know how to like attack off the catch really well. I think we even criticized him for it when we were first examining this Clippers team. Now he's he's gotten so good at it, like just playing fast, playing as like a connective tissue kind of guy when the Clippers already have an advantage. He's done such a good job of deferring to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And I want to personally apologize to him because I feel like we did not talk about him enough when we were making our All-Star teams, but he's been incredible this year. And the fact that he can still scale it up for me just does a lot for me, and it puts him at number 7. But this is like, for me, this is the last guy that we're going to talk about who wouldn't get All NBA consideration this year for me.
I think that's fair. Whoa! So now I'm wondering who I forgot.
So I like All NBA. I mean, like top 15 player in the league. I know you have to do by the position and stuff. I'm saying like all 6 of these guys are like guys I would consider for my top 15. My next 6.
I'm so scared at who I might have forgotten. So at 6, I have James Harden at 6. I think he's been, better than a lot of the guys that we talked about by far. This is easily his most portable season since his OKC days. Second most efficient season of his career. Most efficient season of his career if you look at only the seasons where he's been in a primary role. And it's not even close. Like, it's absurd how efficient he's been. I think he's like 64.4% true shooting, something like that. Usage is way down, but like you said, they're still running a ton of spread pick and roll. And like the fact that the Clippers are zigging while everybody's zagging with the whole, like, we're going to get Zubac's super underrated. But like Daniel Tice is fine. Daniel Tice is a fine center. And it's not that Daniel Tice in a vacuum is like some, great, super underrated off the bench center. He's as good as he's been because he fits James Harden perfectly. It's like a glove. And it just goes back to, the whole philosophy of like, oh, you have this really, really like pick and roll slanted point guard who can create advantages off the dribble and just put a vertical threat next to him that can throw down lobs or get the pass in the short roll. And it's like, wow, Zubac and Daniel Tice might be all you need because you have James Harden. Now, granted, I will say Zubac is very, very underrated. I think he is, for some teams, starter caliber. For other teams, maybe like 6th, 7th, 8th man, minutes wise. But, like, this is working because James Harden is as good as he is. And also, James Harden's a good defender. I don't know who needs to hear that.
Now.
James Harden is a good defender. Like, is he an elite defender? Is he going to be the first, second, third? Even he might be the fourth best defender on the floor, depending on what lineup they have. But that's not a diss at all. Like, all defense, pretty much, as far as I've looked, based on the metrics that I've looked at, all the advanced defensive metrics have him as a positive. His defensive contributions don't like fall through the floor when like Kawhi and Paul George aren't on. He's just good. He has a ton. I think he just has a ton of institutional knowledge that they're starting to get value out of. He just knows where to be, and even if you're hiding him on some guys on some possessions, he's still able to do like prudent digs on drives, and he knows when to help, when to stay home. It's just little stuff he's doing. It seems like he's just culminated a lot of the little stuff and put it all together. And it's like, oh yeah, if you just do a bunch of the little things, you end up being a good defender. And yeah, man, shout out James Harden. I debated having him higher. But yeah, six is ultimately where I put him.
Yeah. The other thing is that this big word for the playoffs, physicality. Like, he's a big guy. Like, that's the difference between him and Trae Young. Like, Trae Young's, I think he's starting to learn all that institutional knowledge stuff. He's got all the tricks too. But Harden's just bigger, stronger. Like, if you can like properly pack the paint behind him and Paolo Banchero's trying to drive the ball, like, yeah, that's actually somebody who can stand up to Paolo because he's so big and strong. Yeah, we got to stop making fun of Paolo Banchero. He's a really good player. We actually have never spoken highly of him or any Magic player. Now that I think of it, have we talked about any Magic players on this podcast before?
I've gassed up Jalen Suggs quite a bit.
He deserves that gas
in early episodes.
Speaking of number 6 on my list, what do you think of Jalen Suggs? I'm kidding. I'm so kidding.
Matt, I was not going to be happy.
He was on my top 23 list for point guards. He's probably in the top 20.
I think I might have had him. He was in the field, but yeah, I think top 20 is probably where I ended up. Yeah. But anyways.
Such a fun player.
Yeah, he rocks.
Number 6. So I actually originally started out having him at 4, but then I realized that it would be in kind of a deviation from my general philosophy of I haven't seen it in the playoffs. But number 6, I have Tyrese Halliburton.
Okay, we're not too far off.
Okay. So I have been a little bit lower on the whole Hallie experience than a lot of people because, I kept hearing the Steve Nash. The thing is that when Steve Nash was doing what he did in the mid-2000s with that Suns team, the best offense in the league, historical offensive rating, right? They weren't a bad defense. They were an average defense. So they weren't putting out strictly offensive personnel to juice their offense, and, kill their defense. Like, they had average defense, and then they had this insane offense, right? The Pacers have the insane offense, but their defense is pretty bad. I watched them play the Charlotte Hornets the other day. Charlotte Hornets just looked more like a basketball team than they should have against a pretty healthy Pacers team. So the defense, and I don't think, but the thing is, I was looking at some, so I looked at a lineup of, I think it was Nembhard, Hield, who's no longer with the team. Nembhard, Hield, where was that lineup? So it was only 106 possessions, so very, very small sample size. Nembhard, Siakam, Nesmith, Turner, Hield. Okay, and they were in the 8th percentile in defensive rating, right? So it's not like, but that they also had terrible shooting luck. So they'd probably be like, 30, 40th percentile, whatever, okay? But that's like no Halliburton, and these are all like, on paper supposed to be. So it's not like Halliburton is the reason that this defense is like catastrophic, right? I think some of their guys are overrated on defense. I think we've overrated Miles Turner on defense. I think Pascal Siakam might be a little bit overrated on defense. Andrew Nembhard is not overrated on defense. He is. We have to have a talk about Andrew Nembhard before he starts to do things. Episode. Yeah, before he starts to do things and national media notices. But Halliburton is probably top 3. Top 3 offensive player on this list. He's an insane offensive player. I think that he knows how to play with pace. He knows how to play with speed. He can play on and off the ball. His off-ball shooting numbers, indicators are awesome. Cerebral player, if I've ever seen one. And I have faith that with better defensive infrastructure, he could figure it out on defense. He's a big body. He's very smart, very intelligent, very aware of defensive rotations. I also think his motor suffers a little bit because of the speed in which they play at and just how much he has the ball in his hands. The reason I don't have him higher than 6 is like I said, I haven't seen it in the playoffs yet. If I had some playoff data to go off of, and it was like kind of what I'm seeing right now, I'd probably have him at 4. I'd have him over these next 2 guys. But yeah, I haven't seen the playoffs yet. I'm worried about how he handles the physicality. I'm worried about what the length does to him. I think we've talked about this before in our contenders pod, but I think he capitalizes too much on low-hanging fruit. And I wonder what it looks like when the fruit's not hanging that low anymore. So that's
exactly why I have him no higher than 5 was what you alluded to of like, he settles for like the predictable thing, and I want to see more of the unpredictable from him. I'll echo a lot of the same stuff you said about him, just as we flow into the top 5 here. He's at 5 for me. I know some people might have their feathers ruffled by that, but I think when we talk about the 4 guys that I have ahead of him, I think it makes a lot of sense. Like you alluded to, we've seen him be an elite passer, but he settles for a lot of that low-hanging fruit. And when you look at a guy like Trae Young, where he's like a ton of his creations coming off the dribble, he's like immediate advantage creator. He creates all these unique passing angles and finds guys out of nowhere when there's seemingly no pass available. I need to see Tyrese does that. I'm not saying he doesn't do that. I don't want anyone to misconstrue it. I just want to see him leverage that more. Don't settle as much for, the good shot that was created. I want you to create an even better shot. Like you created this, you drew help at the nail and you passed to the shooter 1 pass away. That's a good shot. Create better ones more. That's all I want from him. And that's like, we have him, for me, he's a top 5 point guard right now. He starts to do that. We're talking, top 4, top 3. Who knows how high things can get for him once he becomes more of a diverse passer, I guess is really the way I'd put it. And overall, I think as an advantage creator, he's still young, and his experience as a number 1 is still in its relative infancy. But I think as that grows, his advantage creation will continue to grow with it, and he's going to be fantastic. Off the dribble. Right now, he can be slowed down by physical defense, and I don't know. I'm excited to see more, but I do need to see more.
Yeah. Also, one other thing, I think he's a little bit too pass focused on his drives. Like, you'll see him drive a lot and unnecessarily pass when the help actually goes towards the pass, and he could have finished at the rim. But
Caitlin Cooper, shout out to her. She talks about that a lot. Honestly, like anything Tyrese Halliburton or Pacers related, you got to shout out Caitlin Cooper.
She knows his game better than he does.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Hasn't he actually said that before?
Yeah. I think something like that. They tweet at each other a lot.
Go check out Caitlin's work. We'll put some links. I'll link her Patreon in the description. But she'll have more than anything about Tyrese Halliburton.
I just figured out who you're missing, and he's actually number 4 on my list, so that's gonna be kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So my number 5 is who I assume your number 4 is. And number 5, I have Jalen Brunson.
So give me a spoiler real quick and say who your number 4 is.
Jalen Brunson's your 4, right?
Yes.
There's nobody in your top 3. Okay, that top 3 is it's hard to get into.
Yeah.
That's a really tricky top 3. I don't want to give it to you yet. Do you want to talk about Jalen Brunson first?
You go for it. Yeah, go ahead and speak your piece. I'm scared.
I'll let you speak because I'm going to get to say some piece on a guy that you apparently don't think you think Tyrese Maxey's better than this guy. So go ahead.
I think I know who it is, and I think I kind of just forgot, for lack of a better word. But
this guy keeps getting forgotten. That's the thing. Society keeps forgetting about him.
We'll revise this because I think I know who you're talking about now.
Yeah.
But I'm still surprised that you have him this high. Jalen Brunson at 4. I know it might be a little bit controversial. I think the fact that he is probably one of the most like legit 3-level scorers here makes up for the lack of the absurd like assist numbers that we've kind of come to expect from a lot of point guards. And again, this is kind of what I alluded to at the beginning of the episode was like the point guard position has shifted not just in the last like 5 years, in like the last 2 years, to where you don't have to be a 10 assist guy, 8-9 assist guy to be a top 5 point guard. Like it's not necessary because teams I think have just gotten so much better with like connective passing and like 2-headed dragons. It's not as like you don't need one guy shouldering as much of a load anymore. And I'm not saying Jalen Brunson would be racking up 10, 11 assists a night with more of a passing load, but I'm saying he doesn't need to right now. And that's a partial credit to him and a partial credit to the Knicks as a whole. I'm not going to say he's a world beater defensively, but he's not nearly as much of a liability as some of the other guys. Yeah, he's a big dude. Like, you know, how tall is he? Like 6'1"?
He's only 6'1", 6'2", but he's built.
Yeah, he's built like a tank. But I will say like the fact that he is not. You definitely can't. I don't think you can target Jalen. If you have to pick somebody on the floor to target, it might be Jalen Brunson by default, but you're not happy about it. You're not happy about having to target him. That's still going to be, you're still going to have a hard time targeting him. And that's kind of a needle mover when you're talking about how a lot of these guys stack up. I think he's a very portable player. That's kind of going back to his time in Dallas. He can do on-ball stuff. He can do off-ball, and either way, you're happy with it. I don't know, man. Scoring wise, you're not going to find, especially with the 3-point leap that he took this year, you're not going to find a more diverse scorer in the point guard position. This guy scores from everywhere on the floor. Every single spot on the floor, this dude can get a bucket at will. And like, yeah, it's great. Scoring buckets is cool. Flashy shot making is cool, but also the implications that has for defenses, especially for a team like the Knicks, where like we know they can play defense, we know they have like the whole ISO thing, but having somebody like Jalen Brunson who is just so reliable, that means a lot for me for them as a postseason team.
Yeah, the Knicks, when Jalen Brunson's on the court, despite fielding Julius Randle in a lot of those minutes, 94th percentile in offensive rating league-wide. I need to edit that out. But yeah, he's awesome. The master of 2 feet, incredible control, incredible handle. That's something that Maxey, I feel like that's what kind of like Maxey's next step would be, is like to kind of learn how to prolong his dribble when he's dealing with traffic, when he's dealing with these kind of sketchy situations. Last season in the playoffs, Brunson was in the 96th percentile in scoring volume while still being in the 71st percentile in scoring efficiency. That's when the playoffs. That's before they got OG Anunoby on their team and Dante DiVincenzo. So this was a worse version of the Knicks. Yeah, he's awesome. I want to say something really quickly, just to kind of give the folks at home, at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, but before I, make fun of you for missing number 4 here, my 10 through 7, I would say, is all in like the same kind of tier for me. Like I could be talked into like Harden a little bit lower, or Fox a little higher, or Young a little lower. My 6 through 4 is all like pretty interchangeable. Like I could change it just depending on the day, depending on the game. And then my 3 through 1 is all in the same tier. I don't know if it's as fluid, but they're all in the same kind of tier. You kind of have that same structure there?
Yes, and I think I know who you're going to have, and I have already made my revision to my list based on what we've discussed. So I'll say, I think I know who it's going to be, but I'll say where I have him once you speak your piece.
Just so we can work on our mental connectivity as podcast hosts, why don't you tell me who it is?
Is it Jamal Murray?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Jamal Murray,
that's what I thought.
The man who has never made an All-Star game, is actually like a top 15 player in the world right now. And I think he's the 4th best point guard that this league has to offer. What is there to say that hasn't already been said about Jamal Murray? Like, he is the perfect like 2-man partner for the delay handoff action. It's not just Jokic. You put him next to Alperen Şengün, he looks awesome. Put him next to Sabonis, he looks awesome. Put him next to Bam Adebayo, he looks awesome. He knows the thing, okay, I'm just going to talk specifically why I have him over Brunson, right? Because I feel like that's probably the one that matters the most right now.
It's a little spicy.
First he's just bigger than Brunson. He's a little bit taller than Brunson. He's like in the 60th percentile in the entire league in block rate. And then for point guards, he's in the, where are we? Here we go. 89th percentile for point guards. Okay, so he's like a credible, like a big body for a point guard. If that's your shortest guy, I remember last postseason when Jimmy Butler kept trying to hunt him in isolation and it just wouldn't work. Like he was just too strong. So you have that. I know I was kind of surprised by this. I think he's in the 39th percentile in scoring efficiency, but this guy's shot diet is ridiculously tough.
Yeah.
Like
he probably has the most difficult shot diet outside of like the top three.
How about I tell you that he is only assisted on 6% of his mid-range shots. 18%. He's in the 6th percentile in mid-range assisted shots. So all of these are pull-ups. And then the crazy one is he's in the 4th percentile in assisted three-point shots. 4th percentile. So he's taking more pull-up threes than anybody. And in the postseason, this is huge to have that kind of shot making. And then the fact that he can play off ball too. He's a great spacer. People thought he was a 2-guard coming into the league. That's how good of a spacer he is. Dynamic passer, super creative, super, what's the word I'm looking for? Daring. He's a daring passer. He's not afraid to throw a crazy skip pass to the corner. Again, being able to play with that tempo that I like about Halliburton, Murray has that, and then he also has the shot making in his back pocket, where I don't think Halliburton has that shot making. So to kind of like, to put it more like poignantly, I guess the reason I have him over Halliburton is because he has that shot making better defender too. And then the reason I have him over Brunson is the size, and then I think he can play with a little bit more pace than Brunson can, and a little bit more of those quick hitting actions that are, obviously the most efficient actions in basketball now.
Yeah. So I echo everything you say. I will say I'm probably a lot lower on Jamal Murray's defense than you. Mm-hmm. I think he's been, a terrible defender this year. But in the playoffs, it's a different discussion. I think, there are guys who can just kind of turn it on when they need to. And I think he is probably one of those guys. This year, it's such a drastic difference from what we've seen from him defensively in the past that I think it's more of just like kind of coasting rather than like, oh, he's just a bad defender. That seems unlikely to me. If I had to redo my list, which I'm going to redo my list right now and say that 10 would be Tyrese Maxey for me, 9 would be De'Aaron Fox, 8 would be Trae Young, 7 James Harden, 6 Tyrese Halliburton. What did I do?
I think you left him off the list again, didn't you?
No, 5 Jamal Murray.
Oh.
I kicked Damian Lillard out of the top 10. I'm so low on Damian Lillard this year. He's been so bad. But Jamal Murray, I may do a video about it. I don't know how much kind of like juice this has. I've clipped a ton of stuff about this and started writing a script about it. Jamal Murray has had a pretty significant playmaking leap. I think this is by far the best playmaking season of his career. He's been really, 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 really good as a passer. And I think that opens up a lot for them potentially, especially with kind of some of the juice that they lost from last year. But yeah, I wouldn't have him over Jalen Brunson personally, just because my opinion of Jalen Brunson's defense is a lot higher than my opinion of Jamal Murray's defense this year. But if you're kind of factoring in historical context, I would have Jamal Murray at 4 here over Jalen Brunson. The reason I didn't have him on here initially is simple oversight. Just oh yeah, Jamal Murray exists, which like you said is kind of the story of his career.
Yeah. One other stat. So you know how everyone always talks about the non-Jokic minutes, right? It's like a death sentence for the Nuggets. They die.
Right.
Do you know what they were in the playoffs last year when Jokic was on the bench?
Probably not good. Or no, well, with I remember this was shockingly surprising.
Yeah. So +7.
They held water, right? Yeah.
+7. And do you know why they were at +7?
Jamal Murray.
100. You know it. This guy, he can do, the thing is he can do like some of the little helio ball stuff too. So he's like this perfect 2-man partner, playmaker, like you said, great playmaker. And my suspicion is, I know defensive EPM doesn't like him too much this year. My suspicion is that the Nuggets as a whole will see a different version of them in the playoffs. They're just too well coached. They're too, like, that 5-man unit is too in sync. Yeah, love me some Jamal. Also some funky stuff going on with their lineups right now. Something weird about the way Michael Malone does stuff, where it's like some days he like loves Payne Watson, other days it's like, yeah, you're not playing today, dude. Despite our front office publicly stating that they're in love with you, you're not playing today.
Right.
So now this is the core three. These three guys are all like top 8, top 7 players in the world, right?
Yeah. All three of these guys are top 10 for sure.
Yeah, for sure top 10, maybe top 8, depending on. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about that when the time comes. So my number 3 guy, I know if I know you at all, you're gonna 1,000,000% disagree with me here. Again, this is my philosophy of I need that playoff data. I need to see how it looks in the playoffs because that's what matters at the end of the day. At number 3, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
That's who I have at number 3.
No way, dude. Yep. Really?
To me, that doesn't even feel like a diss. I feel like 3 is like, yeah, he's number 3. Like, sweet. He's a top 3 point guard. That's great. Like, I don't know how you can be upset about that. Like, I know I have some fellow OKC fans listening. Like, I'm saying right now that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a top 3 point guard. Please do not interpret that as a diss because that's insane. Like the victim complex you have to think that it's like a diss to call him a top 3 point guard in the NBA. Like I can't wrap my head around that. Continue.
Dude, I would have, after our conversation for the All-Star ballots, I would have sworn you had him at 1 or 2. So you see what I'm seeing then. It's like, so obviously, let's real quickly, because we're not going to be haters. Insane ability to put pressure on the rim. Ability to create open threes is like almost unparalleled. The only his one of the guys ahead of him right now honestly creates more open threes for his teammates than him. He's incredible finisher, incredibly crafty finisher, and then. Dude, there's times where I have to like wipe my glasses when I'm watching games because I think I'm watching Michael Jordan in an Oklahoma City Thunder jersey with the mid-range, the step back, the swagger, the push-offs. Like he's incredible. Defense, big improvement this year. I still think it's a little bit more boom or bust type defense. He focuses more on making big plays, which historically that's what stars usually do. Star non-big men usually focus on defense is, trying to get steals, trying to get blocks, make those big boom or bust plays. They're not like master rotation guys, things of that nature. I think he still misses some rotations. His motor wanes at times, although he carries a very high offensive load. So before I let you riff on him, I think the 2 big things that are really key, it's more of a one big thing, right? Don't trust the 3-point shot yet, okay? And because I haven't seen him in the playoffs as a primary in this role, like I know he's played early in his career, but because I haven't seen him in this role in the playoffs yet, I don't know how his below average 3-point shot is going to hurt him. Maybe he could be like Jimmy Butler, where it's like it doesn't matter to him. That's not something that like slows him down really. But I'm curious. I'm cautious. That's why I have him at 3 right now. But there's a world where after this postseason, honestly, I have him at 1. There is a world where I have that.
Your concerns are my concerns too. I really, really, really want him to expand that part of his game, the perimeter stuff, because like we know he can create space. Like he has no problem creating space on the perimeter. I honestly just wish. I'm okay with his percentages going down if he's attempting like 5 to 6 attempts per night and like getting those reps. Because like I can live with that if it's going to make you a better perimeter shooter in the postseason, more of a diverse scoring threat. Because I'm not concerned necessarily, but I think that mid range and paint stuff is going to be a little bit more game planable. And we've seen like. Size and staunch rim defense can slow him down. Like a matchup against the Timberwolves, I think is a very tough matchup for OKC because the size is just they're very yin and yang kind of teams, like philosophically. The Timberwolves have a ton of length, but it's a different type of length. OKC has a ton of length, but it's typically packaged in a shorter body, so to speak, aside from Chet Holmgren, obviously. And it's like a lot more wing play, whereas the Timberwolves are a lot more like big man play. And then we'll have like a traditional point guard and like Mike Conley on the floor. But then sometimes we're going to have Anthony Edwards, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert on the floor together. And it's like, whoa, how the heck do we even get through this? It's like stuff like that kind of concerns me a little bit about OKC. When teams start throwing zones at them, they have a zone beater in Shai, but when like a team like the Timberwolves throws zones at them, it's like they gotta stop and think for a second. They're like, whoa, this is weird. So I want to see that 3-point threat become something that he can lean on a little bit more. I think his playmaking overall has improved significantly, which has always kind of been something that people have knocked Shai for. Is like he's a good passer, but how much of this is like conscientious playmaking as opposed to reactionary passing. That's something that Ben Taylor kind of talked about in his profile on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander last year. He's definitely not a traditional point guard, but again, kind of speaks to how the point guard position has changed very, very recently. In a sea of offensively slanted point guards, he's probably the best two-way point guard right now, just in terms of like high-end offense and like solid defense. I agree with you that he's more focused on like defensive event creation as opposed to like always making the right rotations. I've noticed that's something that OKC kind of does, is like in a lot of their defensive lineups, they'll have one guy who's kind of like, yes, you can gamble and then we're going to clean up for you. And Shai usually is playing as that kind of gambler. Of the guys that we selected from, he is the only one who had +1 in both offensive and defensive EPM.
Fox is close though. I think Fox is
Fox
close,
is
right?
very, very close.
Yeah.
I believe he's like, 0.8. So yeah, I have Shai at 3, and some people probably have him at 2. The guy I have at number 2, it's really hard not to have him at number 2, especially lately. So I think you and I probably have the same top 3 at this point.
Yeah. One other thing, I wrote something small in a fan-sided column. I wrote about Shai a year and a half ago, where I thought the pathway for him would be to be like the next Penny Hardaway, and now it's really starting to happen. Like he reminds me so much of Penny, like so much of Penny. Penny was one of the first guys to really kind of usher in this change of like, you no longer need to be pass first. Like you can be a volume scorer and then also a really good passer off of that. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm happy where Shai's career is trending. That'll be a very funny mental kind of exercise for you when the Timberwolves and Thunder play each other. Anyways.
Hey, I've said it a ton in the past. People are like, oh, you're secretly a Timberwolves fan. I'm like, OKC is number 1. It's going to take a lot for that to change. But yeah, sorry, Timberwolves. If I got to choose, it's going to be OKC. But anyways, back to the topic at hand.
Yeah, so my number 2, I hope it's your number 2, is Luka Doncic. Wait, what? No, come on. You think Luka Doncic is better than Stephen Curry?
I do think Luka Doncic is better than Stephen Curry.
Okay, so do you want me to sell you this pen first, or are you gonna sell me the pen?
I feel like you sell me the pen, and I'll tell you what I think about the pen after you try to sell it to me.
Again, like maybe I sound like Mike Budenholzer here, right? But like the point of having a process is like sticking to that process, okay? In my process, my theory is like, playoffs. Like, what do I know about you in the playoffs? And like, as much as like, I mean, Doncic is as like playoff proof as anybody. Like his scoring efficiency numbers are insane in the playoffs. But like Curry, like what he does still in the postseason and like the dynamicism of his offense that he provides, and the fact that he's become like just a pretty solid guard defender in the playoffs. Like all of that, I mean, it's close. It's really close. I just think that the ceiling is higher with a Curry offense in the playoffs because he can give you that on-ball juice and then also the crazy, chaotic off-ball juice, whereas Doncic is, it's just more of the helio ball and then some staticky off-ball like offense. I think he's obviously a better defender than most people give him credit for, although I think some metrics might overstate his impact. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with why I have Curry over Doncic. What about you?
I'm with you where like it's hard to look at the body of work for Steph Curry and like try to argue anyone over him. But the more I just like looked at what Luka's doing this year and like considering he has some playoff track record to go off of, it was just like, man, this is insane. Like I genuinely can't believe that a player is doing what he's doing. 34 points, 8.8 rebounds, 9.5 assists, 62% true shooting for Luka this year, 74% at the rim, 96th percentile in the NBA, 49.1% in the mid-range. And I'm someone who's kind of been a critic in the past of Luka as a mid-range scorer. Like, I think sometimes he leaned on it a little bit too much. And this year I'm like, dude, take all the mid-range shots you want because they're going in. And the three-point volume, man, like I get Steph Curry's still a better three-point shooter than Luka by far, but him and Luka are the only players in the NBA attempting 10-plus threes a night. Luka's hitting them at 37.5%. Curry's hitting them at a higher clip, but the scoring profile between these two, it was just like the different ways, and that's not to say Steph isn't capable of burning you from multiple different areas of the court, but it's just how lethal Luka is from every area of the court that really sold me. And then the passing obviously is Steph Curry. Obviously, we know he play makes without the ball. Like, yes, it's something we've talked about for years and years and years now. Like his assist numbers are deceptive. I get that. The passes that Luka Doncic makes on a nightly basis are just some of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my entire life watching basketball. Like, they are absurd passes, literal eyes in the back of your head passes. And like, yeah, I think some people are juicing Luka's defensive contributions a little bit. I saw a stat that was like, Luka's a top 10 ISO defender this year. And it's like, okay, when you're defending ISOs that are like 5 seconds left on the shot clock with a guy like, I don't know, just some like arbitrary like fourth option here. Like when you're defending a Harrison Barnes ISO with 5 seconds left on the shot clock, I don't
you
really...
watch yourself, buddy. You watch it. Watch it with Harrison Barnes.
All I'm saying is Luka, this is all in defensive. It sounds like I'm dissing Luka as a defender, but all of this is in defense. He has improved drastically as a defender. He's not going to be getting any all defense selections here soon, but I think he's held his own this year, especially with Derek Lively, and then now with Derek Jones Jr., PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. I think defensively his role is starting to make a lot more sense as they fleshed out this roster. Steph, none of this is a diss on Steph. I think Steph, if you have him at number one, totally fine with me. I have him at number two. If you put him number one, great. His counting stats, people can get hung up on that. I think if you give Steph a supporting cast that actually is like, and they kind of are now, the Warriors have warped a ton over the last 2 months and kind of look like a different team now. But Steph is just like, he's Steph. We know what he can do. He's incredible. Over the last 15 games, he's attempting 13.4 threes a night. He's shooting 47.1%. 47.1% on 13 threes a night. That is literally unheard of. Literally unheard of. From a value perspective, I don't think there's a ton of other guys you could put over him. Just in terms of like overall contribution, I just not necessarily value. What Luka does on a night-to-night basis and the burden that he bears on a night-to-night basis. That's not saying Steph doesn't bear a similar burden. It's just that for all the critics of Helio ball out there, I'm not saying they're wrong for having criticisms of it. Luka does it in a way that you're just like, duh, you have to do this. Of course you have to play. With a guy like this, you have to play Helio ball. It's like, why wouldn't you? You'd be insane. Yeah. Granted, he can still improve as an off-ball player, which I think would be the big argument of having Steph over him, is just like Steph's off-ball value is just as good as his on-ball value. If not, exactly. You could even argue greater.
And that's kind of where I understand, I think, your argument. But yeah, at the end of the day, for me, it was more the ceiling of a Curry playoff offense. It just felt, I know historically it's stronger. I don't know if hopefully this season that continues to be the case. Hopefully I don't care one way or the other who has the better season. We'll just change our list based off that. I guess hopefully we'll have the chance to find out. Hopefully both of them will be playing playoff basketball. So yeah, so let's real quick. Should we summarize our top 10s first and then do honorable mentions, or honorable mentions then summarize the top 10s?
Let's summarize our top 10s, then do honorable mentions. So you go first. Me,
yeah. So I went 10 Fox, 9 Young, 8 Lillard, 7 Harden, 6 Halliburton, 5 Brunson, 4 Murray, 3 SGA, 2 Doncic, and 1 Stephen Curry.
So I had at number 10, Tyrese Maxey, number 9, De'Aaron Fox, number 8, Trae Young, number 7, James Harden, number 6, Tyrese Halliburton, number 5, Jamal Murray, number 4, Jalen Brunson, number 3, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, number 2, Steph Curry, and number 1, Luka Doncic. Who were your honorable mentions?
Yeah, obviously 1, Maxey, like as much as we're going to joke about him until the end of the time, that's a top 40 basketball player we're talking about. And I'm sure, one of these days he'll evolve into a player that'll be in my top 10. John Morant, another guy we kind of mentioned, didn't know what to do with him. In no order, but some guys that, were pretty good, really good players, top 50 players, just, this is a really stacked position. Darius Garland, he's been injured for a lot of the year. Drew Holiday, he's had like a weird year where it's like he kind of is just like a spot-up shooter now for Boston, but we know what he can do still, but he's kind of older, so maybe he can't do that anymore.
I almost wouldn't consider any player on Boston like a point guard at this point, because
that's true.
It's just so much by committee. He is a point guard, but it's just like there's such a weird team. Anyways, continue.
LaMelo Ball, another one. Injuries, all that. I'm sure he'd probably make a better argument for top 10 if it wasn't for that. Mike Conley, your guy Mike Conley, deserves a shout out, although he probably is more like top 15 than a top 10. CJ McCollum has had an awesome year. We've talked a lot about him. More of a combo guard, but still, he's having a really good year. Just deserves to hear his name called on this podcast. Any ones I missed?
Kobe White. I would give an honorable mention to Kobe White for sure.
Over Jalen Suggs?
Offensively, it's hard to argue. Kobe White's the more I watch of Kobe White, the more I'm like, wow. This dude, I genuinely think he could end up making all-star teams at some point in his career. Like, he's just gotten that much better to me. I become higher and higher on Kobe White the more I watch, which I guess is like confirmation bias, but
yeah. Here, what do we have him at here? I think he's now we're just I don't even know what we're stalling for, because we've already embarrassed ourselves. So he's Bulls offense 59th percentile. Kobe White's on the floor, but it's a 96th percentile on-off offensive change, so that's a pretty huge change. He makes their offense come and go. I guess my thing is with White is like I don't think he's good enough right now to like anchor like a high level offense, like be the primary creator on a high level offense. So why not
I don't
just
think he's a number one. Yeah.
Yeah. So like why not just have the better role player in Suggs, and then you could find like somebody who's good enough to be a number one, but that's
right. I'm more so just speaking in a vacuum, but I agree with that for sure.
That's not the pod. That's not the topic of the pod. Anybody else? I looked at.
CJ, you mentioned CJ.
I mean, Fred VanVleet has had a solid year. Really good defensive guard, physical. He's helped, make this Rockets team not terrible. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, those are really the only.
So the reason we didn't answer questions today to start the podcast is because me and Alex have a little bonus thing we're going to be shooting out there. That'll answer a really big question that we get a lot. So, yeah.
Be on the lookout for that. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Subscribe so you see when the little bonus piece of content pops up. You'll see it when you see it. Thank you guys for listening. The YouTube views, I could care less about, but people are listening to us on like Spotify and stuff. That's really cool. I don't know. I'm pretty pleased with how this has gone so far. I'm glad we're able to take a look at like something like top 10 point guards and tackle it from like a perspective that's not just based in, garbage narrative stuff. Like, even if you disagree with anything we said in this episode, just know that it came from a place of like research and like objectivity, as opposed to just like, oh yeah, he doesn't have that dog in him. We're trying to take this stuff seriously, and we do take it seriously, and hopefully everyone can respect each other's opinions at the end of the day, even if you don't agree with me having Damian Lillard as technically an honorable mention. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the episode. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.